This is Binghamton Now on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton and WNBF.com.
I'm Bob Joseph. Today is Friday, September 6th. You're listening to Binghamton Now. Call us at 607-772-1290. WNBF. As we take to the air today, it is my responsibility to inform you to have a good morning, a better afternoon, and a great weekend. A brief address to the nation. Summed it up in less than 8 seconds. 607-772-1290. Maximum call volume will be accepted today. But we can only do that with the participation of you, the home viewer. So if you're sitting there looking at your radio, you can get involved, be actively engaged when you call us at 607-772-1290. Gary on Binghamton's West Side, you're on the air.
Yellow Bob. Hey, I wanted to thank the Rumble Ponies or Broome County, whoever was responsible for letting veterans get 4 free tickets to the remaining home games for every game, too. It's not just 4 tickets, but you can get 4 tickets to the remaining home games if you're a veteran. And I'd like to thank them for that. And I took advantage of that. And, you know, it's a good thing. And then there's Luma going on this weekend. It's going to be a pretty happening weekend in Binghamton.
It's a great thing.
I'd like to talk about the shooter down in Georgia, the father. And what a story. I mean, it's just incredible to think that there's somebody out there with that mentality that, you know, they questioned his son because he allegedly made threats online on some website on there, and they denied that that was happening. So they have to go with what they're told, so they couldn't charge him with anything. There was no probable cause. And the father said, well, he doesn't have access to guns. I take him out shooting every once in a while, but he doesn't have access to them. And then, after all of that, because they suspected him, because he said he was going to shoot up a school. That's what he said on the internet. So after all of that, you know, the dad thinks, well, I want to get closer to my son, and guns are the way to do it. I'm going to buy him an AR-15 for Christmas. What a thoughtful dad. After all of that happened, and then what could possibly go wrong? It's just sickening to me. You know, he puts a bad thing on all responsible gun owners. It's just, what kind of mentality is that? That you I don't understand it, Bob. I just can't.
And what is the suspect's name? What's his name? Colt? Colt. Yeah, the suspect's name is Colt. What does that stand for?
Beer, I think. Colt 45.
Oh, I thought it was a gun. Don't they have Colt
thing,
guns?
Colt 45. Yeah.
Did he name his son after a gun?
Well, he probably has
Colt.
a gun.
Maybe a gun and beer. That's a deadly combination. Beer and guns can result in poor choices.
Yeah, it was a very poor choice, you know, and I think he had a troubled son or whatever, and he was trying to get closer with them by hunting and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, that's the way to do it. Well, you have a troubled son. I don't care if you have a troubled daughter. You don't get closer to your child by shooting with them. I mean, you can. Well, you can say, I like shooting, so therefore I like to go shooting, and I'm a responsible gun owner, but I know I have a son or a daughter, a teenager who's troubled, so the best way I can get closer and help them deal with their issues is give them access to guns. Yeah, that makes sense, as opposed to, I don't know, a million other things you could do with your kid. Hiking, fishing, whatever. Car racing, building model cars. Get your kid involved with the scouting program. Get closer to your kid. If you do have a child Or for that matter, if you have a parent or a radio show host who's troubled, you don't try to help get closer to them and deal with their issues by saying, hey, let's go out and shoot. It just makes no sense. Look, I support everybody's right to own as many guns as they want. You'll never find a bigger Second Amendment person on WNBF than me, but come on. Now, I want to hear, now remember, before we go any further, I will stipulate that both the teenager and his father are presumed innocent unless and until they are convicted of any charges in the court of law. So at the moment, both of them are as innocent as we are.
Guilty.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I know that the media, the liberal media, has already convicted both of them. So in the court of public opinion, well, you know, if I was going to be honest on the air, I'd say, well, you heard what I said at the, you know, in response to your thing. I mean, I'm passionate about it because I'm angry and sad. I mean, obviously, anger and sadness over the loss of life and other people injured, but also anger and sadness over what this teenager now finds himself facing, and even for his dad. This has nothing to do with politics or nothing to do with where they live or anything like that. It has everything to do with thinking about every individual involved, the innocent people, the students and teachers who were killed, the others who were injured, the trauma that it's caused to the school community and the entire state, and even the nation. I'm saddened for everyone. And again, it's not popular to say that I feel some anger, but also a lot of sadness for both the alleged shooter and his father, because
the aunt came out with a statement.
Yeah, that was an interesting statement that she posted before she deleted it.
Oh, she did? I didn't know that. Oh.
Well, I don't know that she deleted it. She changed her profile to private after people started to share screenshots of her statement. So it may not have been deleted, but I don't believe it's accessible by the general public. But that was quite a statement that was written by a woman who claims to be the aunt of the shooter. I mean, the whole thing sounds terrible.
It does. And she basically said that the adults in this situation failed.
And I think that's true. Even without knowing many details, I think that's a pretty safe conclusion to jump to, that the people in his life, his parents and maybe other relatives, maybe neighbors or teachers or people who maybe could have or should have been in position to see this is a person. Yes, he's troubled. Well, some would argue, well, most teens are troubled at some point. Most people are troubled at some point, and so it's always hard to assess. And so I also sympathize with law enforcement, who apparently interviewed the teenager and his father last year, and after the threats were allegedly posted online, and then ultimately basically said, okay, well, I hope you're telling us the truth. And that's all right now. That's all they can do. Because
that's all they can do. I know.
You know, consider over the course of a year how many calls that police receive from well-intentioned people who are trying to call attention to a person they believe might have the capability or the inclination to kill people. And so people report, and let's face it, most people, I think, are really reluctant. Say, if you are familiar with a neighbor or someone in your family or a fellow student, and you have this gut feeling, this uneasy feeling that he or she is so troubled that they may act out and may harm themselves or others. But even then, I think the default position for most people is not to report it, because I don't think people generally want to be seen as tattletales and troublemakers.
There's probably some truth to that.
Yeah.
You know, thank God for the buttons that they had. They had their new system put in the school the week before, And supposedly that saved a lot of lives, right? You just press the button and it locks everything down. It notifies the police immediately, and the alarms go off in the school. And so thank goodness for that, or there would have been a lot more bloodshed.
And fortunately, there were school resource officers. I mean, they didn't prevent the shooting. They didn't prevent the people being killed and some being injured, but it appears that their prompt response ultimately saved lives. So
I wonder if this was another gun that you could take apart and put together, because how do you go into a school, with a 3.5 foot long rifle?
Who knows? But who knows on any given day, whether it's a school or a business or a large-scale event, who knows about security? You can have a really good security plan, good equipment, and well-trained people, but there's always the human element. There's always a chance that someone is going to slip through no matter how hard you try. Unless everybody who enters a school building first has to go through the security doors. Well, security doors, metal detector, then off into a separate room where they're forced to disrobe to prove that they have no weapons, no guns or knives or anything else, and then allowed to put their clothes back on, and then you put a little stamp on their head like a check mark, a blue check mark, that indicates they're okay, they've passed security. And do that with, now that's okay if you have a really small school, a one-room schoolhouse with only 9 students, wouldn't take that long. Most schools are big and have hundreds of students. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, well, they say that, I heard J.D. Vance say that, you got to get rid of the soft targets, right? And the school is a soft target. And okay, yeah.
Well, I agree. I was driving here on the highway of all places, and I heard some station use that clip, and I thought to myself, absolutely. If that's
what
true.
What happens then, Bob? But Bob, what happens then? So now, okay, they lock the schools down. Guess what? I'm going to go to the supermarket and shoot everybody then instead. I mean, it's just.
Well, that's what the teenager from Conklin did.
Yeah.
And that's another case. Another case that hasn't been sufficiently investigated, and the law enforcement people have never adequately explained the entire thing involving that case, as far as when it was called to their attention that here we apparently had a Susquehanna Valley High School student who was troubled. I think that's pretty safe to say that several months before he went to the Tops supermarket in Buffalo and killed people, black Americans, on a Saturday afternoon, several months before, the police, New York State Police, and maybe some other authorities were called to have a chat with him. And for whatever reason, and I'm not judging, I have questions. I have a few questions. For whatever reason, he was allowed, after apparently posting threats during an online thing with other students. It was like, all right, go and threaten no more. And then we had what happened in May of May 2022? I've lost track what year. The Erie County tragedy happened at Tops Friendly Markets. But what about him? What about the state police? What about his parents? What about other people in his life who may have or should have had some idea that he had a propensity to go and kill innocent people?
Well, you raise a good point, Bob.
Well, nobody wants to ask these questions. It's difficult to bring up. And for the most part, since the Tops tragedy happened in Buffalo, for the most part, I haven't brought it up because it's too generally viewed, I think, as too sensitive and unpleasant to talk about. But here we have another case. Now, again, there are a lot of differences, but there are also some similarities. So that the Susquehanna Valley High School student apparently didn't get his gun, his killer gun, from his dad as a Christmas gift. Merry Christmas, son. Here.
Oh,
have this gun. Merry Christmas. Let's celebrate the spirit of the season. There's your war. If Sean Hannity wants to talk about a war on Christmas, focus on people who give guns to their teenage children to celebrate the spirit of the season. That's a war on Christmas.
Thanks, Dad. Now I can live out my dream of killing people in a school.
Well, they said, some news report said that his dad wanted to get closer to his troubled son because his son had been spending too much time playing video games. There's another thing. What kind of video games was he playing?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Active shooter video games?
It wasn't Pac-Man, Bob. I guarantee that.
Anyway, yeah, it wasn't Pong. Now, I'm sorry to whip myself into a frenzy on a Friday. I was not intending to do this. But, again, I feel passionate about this. We have had our own mass shooting here in Binghamton, and I know some people would think, well, Bob, stop bringing that up. That was more than 15 years ago. That was April 3rd, 2009. We're past that. No, we're never past that. We're never going to fully heal from the tragedy at the American Civic Association on Front Street. But the problem is, one of the problems, it's a complicated issue. One of the problems is it's never appropriate. The time is never appropriate to talk about it because the sensitive people, and you know who those viewers are, Gary, the sensitive people in the audience think it's never appropriate to talk about doing anything serious about these life and death issues right after a tragedy. Well, how long do you have to wait? A month after the last mass shooting? 10 years? So what they're saying effectively is there is no appropriate time to ever talk about coming up with a real workable solution.
I got to ask your opinion on this, Bob, because this is what the news does now, right? So they report about the killing and how it happened and this, that, and then they're like, well, let's go and we're going to tell you about the lives of the people that were killed. That's how they justify putting it on the news, right? So we're putting it on the news, but really we want to know, the lives of the people that were killed. You know what? Don't put it on the news at all. And then maybe this will stop. Maybe, right? But nope, you can't do that either. This, like you said, Bob, it's very complicated. And this case here, though, doesn't appear to be that complicated. It appears that the dad was just a total jack, what.
Well, again, it's not going to be popular if somebody turns on the radio now and hears me say I am both angry and saddened about both the alleged shooter and his father, and maybe his
Most
mom.
People are.
Yeah, but I also, on a human level, feel badly for how their lives are never, ever going to be okay. Whether they live for another 10 years or another 60 years, every single day is not going to be good. And some people would say, and that's exactly the way it ought to be. Well, as a human, it's still, yes, I'm spending most of my time in concentration thinking about those who lost their lives at that school. But again, everybody who is directly or indirectly involved has been hurt.
Yeah. Sorry to bring the show.
No, that's okay. I'm actually glad you did. I was thinking last night and well, I mean, at first when I thought about it, either last night and also this morning, I thought, well, I'm not going to bring it up first thing out of the program because then, that will set the tone for the whole show. And it doesn't necessarily have to set the tone for the next 2.5 hours, but it is such a tragic story, and really not to address it considering the gun violence, the people, whether it's the mass shooting in 2009 in Binghamton, or the Susquehanna Valley High School student who drove his mom's car from Conklin. out to the Tops Friendly Market store in Buffalo to kill black people. For us not to talk about those things, I think is shameful. I think we have to talk about them sometimes. Not all the time, but we can never forget.
I agree. Can I end on a lighter note, Bob? I want to tell you, I have a friend. He has an alcoholic wife, and he lovingly calls her Pumpkin, but I think that he calls her that because she gets smashed around the holidays all the time. Bob, have a good weekend, man.
Thank you. You as well. It's 9:30. You're listening to WNBF Binghamton. More calls are coming up on Binghamton Now. 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. James in Binghamton, good morning. You're on the air.
It's crazy. The Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy in the Infinite Sadness is now almost 30 years old. Getting close to that.
Yeah, it's hard to believe. Hard to believe.
Right? I mean, like all the...
But what's their most recent hit? Are they still smashing songs out of the ballpark, or have they just banned it?
I think a couple original... Billy Corgan's always been an interesting guy, so I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, that's not why I called.
By the way, the word interesting used in describing people is always interesting. Continue.
Well, listen, if you want to dig up and learn more about Billy Corgan, and yes, he is an interesting guy. Talented musician and songwriter. Definitely a bit of an egomaniac. Anyway,
so are talk show hosts. I'm never going to criticize someone for having an ego because if so, I'm going to the same prison.
Fair enough. All right, I wanted to call. I waited all week to call in and talk to you about some happy things, and I guess we'll get to some happy things. But you started off with a good topic, and it's like, well, when's the right time to talk about any of this? And it's like, well, the people who perpetrate these crimes aren't exactly waiting for when it's convenient for us. So, like, why wring your hands and look the other way when this just keeps happening? And it's the only country in the world where this happens with regularity. We could go to certain things like the ability of, semi-automatic and assault weapons laws to sundown, back in the early 2000s. It's pretty much a direct correlation other than Columbine, but you want to talk about practical solutions. You want to talk about where are the red flag things. Listen, I see stories all the time of sheriffs and law enforcement officers in what should we say, freedom-loving areas of the country who come out and literally thumb their nose at like red flag laws or federal efforts to curtail the proliferation of these types of weapons and the ease of getting them by people like this. And so I can only imagine that for everyone that's out publicly rolling their eyes at it, there's a million of them behind the scenes saying, yeah, we're not doing that. Okay. Second of all, a dad says, I want to get closer to my kids, so I bought him the thing that he wants to do damage with. Like, okay, we talk about a mental health crisis. We talk about human services. We talk about parents' rights. How about parents' responsibilities? Like, why was there not a social worker? Why was there not someone from Child Protective Services? Why was there not somebody up there, making sure that kid was seeing a counselor and a licensed therapist on day one, and then following up in the house with a law enforcement officer saying, why are there should not be guns in this house right now? Like, that situation should have been monitored from day one because clearly something's not right there. So you can throw all your rules to a free country. Yeah. And I should have the ability to walk freely around where I live as a tax-paying, loyal citizen of this country. That some kid isn't going to run around with some cosplay toy and kill a bunch of people. Like, listen, you want to have some big guns to play with? That's fine. I fired off some rounds. It's fun. Okay. They belong at a gun club. All right. They belong at an armory. They don't belong in your house. Okay. You don't need an AR to defend your house. You can defend your house with a 9-iron as readily as you could with an AR. So out of here with all this stuff. This is what happens. The ball was dropped. And the same thing with Conklin. Like, this kid literally got lies about some parade guy who ran over people and it was racist, and he put their names on the gun and then went out there and did that. And that could have happened right here.
By the way, how come Governor Kathy Hochul didn't order a full investigation, a blue ribbon panel or something, a full transparent investigation into the entire sorry saga involving that Susquehanna Valley High School student, where things went wrong And not with the intent of castigating people, but so we could learn a thing or two, because for all those people the innocent people who were shopping on a Saturday afternoon at Tops Friendly Markets in Buffalo, I think New York State and the United States owes them and their families, at least in their memory, and also for their families, for the survivors, owes them a full investigation, transparent investigation, and tell us exactly from the first moments that someone called attention to that guy until the terrible moment when he showed up and started killing people on a Saturday afternoon in a large supermarket. I think there ought to be an investigation, and I think Kathy Hochul or Letitia James or both of them should have called for a big investigation that would result in a public report that would be released on the governor's website.
Yeah, talk is cheap, but it's shiny.
I know it's cheap, and I know it wouldn't have. I mean, it wouldn't have undone the damage. But again, my point still is, and again, maybe I'm the only person on the planet out of nearly 8 billion people, the only person who still has a few questions about the shooter from Conklin.
Oh, I know. I have a lot of questions, but that's not why I called. So I'm going to try to transition to a less controversial thing so we can get to the happy thing, because it is Friday. But first of all, yes, no, the answer to the Kathy Hochul thing is because she has a unique ability to annoy as many people possible on all sides. If you're an upstate New Yorker and you don't know about congestion pricing in New York City, I would go look up that whole debacle. We haven't talked about that. That's a fun one. I don't know if you've been following that.
I have, but I haven't really brought it up here because I think that if I brought it up on the program much, people's ears would glaze over and say,
well, they'd be like, I don't care. I either just take the bus or I go to northern Manhattan. I work in New York every so often, so I can understand. Put all the stuff in place and then cancel the program. Yeah, great idea. Anyway, you walked by me at least twice on Porch Fest. I didn't get to say hi. I was watching a band, and then the other one you were filming. You go back and look at some of your videos. There's probably one of me slamming a beer somewhere.
On what street?
Were you on? I'm going to guess Chestnut Street.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, first I think I saw you at Rec Park. Heading to Rec Park.
That's where I started. I worked my way east.
Yep. Yeah. Was that your? I could be wrong. I feel like you told me once that you hadn't been to a Porch Fest yet.
That is true. That was my first. But based on my experience, I'm going to every Porch Fest in Binghamton from here on out. I enjoyed it so much.
And I'm not saying that to try to take anything away from Luma this weekend, because that's amazing, too, in its own way. But, yeah, no, Porch Fest Day is a great day. The weather's always nice. And I'm glad you got to get out and experience it, because it was a good day this year, though it was interesting. I don't know if you were there at the very end, and they were, dutifully around all day. But man, the BPD shut that down real quick at about 7:00. I don't know if you. It was pretty fast and aggressive. Everybody was off the street very quickly.
Well, because it was supposed to end at 7.
Yeah,
it wasn't supposed to end at 7:17 or 7:22. It was supposed to end at 7. And here's the thing about that, and I love loud music and good music as much as the next person.
Yeah,
but if the city provides all this support, including law enforcement and a lot of other support, if the city provides support and says, okay, Porch Fest can go on, I don't know what the official starting time was, if it was officially from noon to 7, then follow the order. Everybody has a phone that has the official time on it. So if the agreement with the city of Binghamton was that this will run from noon to 7 p.m., run it for 7 hours, and at 6:59 pull the plug.
Well, that's true. Like, if you were to go to, a third-party concert venue, and if you're a band and you try to play past curfew, I mean, I think they bill you something like $20,000 a minute.
Yeah,
like
it's not rocket science, and I know some people, some of the progressive liberals will call in and say, "Bob, you're no fun," or some of the conservatives will say, "Bob, you're no fun." No, I'm fun, but I respect when you make an agreement, especially when you have received support. that potentially could have totaled thousands of dollars, support from the city, whether it was law enforcement or public works or whatever, show your respect and say, okay, we want to party all night, like the KISS group. They wanted to rock and roll and party all night. Well, they were the KISS, and they could do that at a venue where it was allowed. But if there is an event that you've agreed to end at 7, then end it at 7.
All right, that was a rabbit trail. What did you enjoy most about it? What were you most
Everything. I can't even begin. Top to bottom, beginning to end. I was there. I was on site at 11:52 a.m. and I didn't leave until I think 7:33 p.m. So I was there. I didn't plan to spend that much time, but I enjoyed every aspect.
It goes so fast. It's great because you can't really have a plan. Maybe see one or two things that you know you want to see. Otherwise, you just keep creeping around the next corner. And
it's like being a kid. If you like music, it's like being a kid in a candy shop.
And you get some lemonade from the kids at the lemonade stand. No, it's a great day. And again, if anybody is listening who's never ventured down there for Porch Fest, I know a lot of places do Porch Fests around the country, and I'm sure they do a good job. But man, it's hard to think of a neighborhood better suited for that than the Abel Bennett track.
Absolutely. Appreciate your call.
Thanks, Bob.
Have a great weekend.
We'll talk about congestion pricing next weekend in the midst of some presidential discussion, like when nobody is expecting it.
Thank you. It's 9:44 here at WNBF. More calls are coming up. Stand by for more public opinion only on WNBF. Let's go to Vestal. Paul, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bob. I just wanted to comment because I've been on both sides of this issue with the kids' problems. I've worked in semi-law enforcement program as well as treatment programs. Let me say on the semi-law side of the aisle, believe it or not, if Matt is listening, Matt and I have worked together. Matt used to work at a Division for Youth urban home, and I used to work as a counselor. Counselor is a misnomer, I think. We also had the powers of a youth parole officer. When I was working with the kids, this is back in the days, I had a briefcase. In addition to a lot of stuff, I had warrants. If a kid started acting out, if a kid was dangerous, if a kid was violating his parole, I could go to any police station, and I've gone to Binghamton, Waverly, etc., issue a warrant, and arrest the kid on the spot. That is, of course, that was ended by Cuomo the father, not the son. And that was a significant program because you would not only treat the kids, but you would supervise the kids after treatment. And I think we were doing too good a job because in a way, almost 50% of the kids got violated and got sent back for treatment. That's probably an upside number, not that many, but significant amount. On the flip side, I've worked in a professional role in school systems. I was a treatment, let me back out. I'm a psychologist. I worked as a psychologist at the maximum security facility of McCormick, which is just out of Tioga County. And I've worked with the gangbangers from New York City, etc. And as well as I worked in the Binghamton School District as a school psychologist. I wanted to talk a little bit about prevention.
And that's one of the most important things. I mean, we can't do anything about what's already happened, whether it was the most recent incident we're talking about today or any of the others we've touched on. You know, what's done is done. But I'm really hoping at some point Americans, both average Americans and people in positions of authority can work to find some real solutions and try to prevent more of these tragedies?
Well, I live in Vestal, and I've seen tons of lawn signs about we got to get a police officer in school. That's a piece of the puzzle, small piece, I would say. What Binghamton had, and I got to praise them, they had a treatment team. It consisted of the school psychologist, a school counselor, a social worker, and the administrator in charge of discipline. We met, we discussed, we had plans on kids who are in need of treatment services. They should have also been working with people in the community, such as DSS, who also work with these kids. And also they had some parenting programs after school, too. That is, the old saying, an ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. The other thing we did, and I've seen this in the treatment programs that I work with, you have an administrator when they are transitioning to the programs. Like at one program I worked at, we had a certified school, and we had administrators at the door when the kids went from the residential section to the school. They greeted the kids. They knew the kids by name. They could see you if you're smart. If you work in this area, you could see a kid perhaps who's having a bad day. You could develop a relationship with them. You could interfere with the process that's going down that's before it becomes a major problem. And that is something that every school system should have something like that. A police officer, very... Hardly anybody's going to open up to a police officer. But most people are intimidated or feel threatened in some way by cops. Even people who haven't been involved in the system find it intimidating, because I think there's a concern just one thing you say could wind up getting you in a world of trouble. So I think a lot of times people are extremely guarded with what they say to a police officer. Yes, and if you have a trusted treatment program, your best source is going to be the other kids, because they're right there.
Right.
Well, they're going to be your best source. A police officer has its place, but that's their places after the fact. Hopefully, you don't want to get to that place.
Right. Well, hopefully, a lot of circumstances can be discovered in the very early stages before anybody gets to the point where they feel so frustrated that it evolves into homicidal rage.
Yeah, and this is just my bitch. I've also worked in administrative capacities, even at the maximum security facility at McCormick, as well as other programs. And we see a lot of, we're in an environment which we have an uptick of problems. But I saw some of this coming when they dissolved some of my positions as counselors with the Division of Youth, did away with them. At the same time, I saw that they closed the psych center. They closed the developmental center. I got to tell you something. This is a true story. So as a psychologist, they made the psychologist the administrator. So I'm the administrator of a treatment unit. The treatment unit was probably the most difficult treatment unit there, because not only had to be developmentally delayed, you also had to have a mental health, this is at least one of these, diagnosis, and you had to have a criminal, a crime, convicted of a crime. So I have this guy who's a sex offender with a phone, his cell phone, and I'm saying, give me that cell phone. He says, that's mine. I says, you're a sex offender, you got a cell phone, and you're unsupervised. It's not a good thing. But they overrid me, and they gave it to him back, and some of the decisions that were made, example, closing the developmental center. You put a lot of people out on the street, close the psych center, a lot of people out on the street, and almost at the same time, they were cutting back on mental health services, the county mental health services. What do you expect is going to happen? And the homeless, at least not all, but that's a result of at least some, if not a significant part.
Well, it's inevitable making changes like that. Appreciate some of your insights. I hope you have a good day. Thank you for giving us a little more information into some of the things that most of us don't know anything about. DJ in Binghamton, good morning.
Hey, I should call back. You put me right before the news. How long do I have?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I agree with the consensus about the shooting. The parent is now charged with 2 murder charges. If you know there's a Jezebel spirit, why would you do that? For people who don't know what that is, you can Google it. But Bob, you want to be closer with your son or daughter? Give him an air rifle.
No.
Tell him.
No. If you want to be closer to your son or daughter, don't give them anything, including a squirt gun.
Well, I mean, for like target practice. But anyway, listen to this.
No.
Bob, listen. Bob, calm down. I only got a minute, and I'm working. And another thing, let me finish. You want to get closer to your son or daughter? Tell him or her about the proverb that says, son, listen to my understanding. They took tell your son or daughter about the part where the guy got his head lopped off. Yeah. Because yes, it was at the behest of what's his face's the king's wife. Yeah. Why don't you lop his head off? Tell your kid about that. And they took prayer and Bible out of the schools. This is the repercussions. Remember Reverend Wright?
It has nothing to do with prayer being in schools or not. It has everything to do, well, to a large extent, with parents not being able to properly raise their kids.
What do you call yourself? What does James Kelly call you? Listen, give me 20 seconds. I'm in agreement with you guys, but there's better ways to get closer to your son or daughter than giving them an AR-15. Now the father's going to go to prison. You think he's going to win against the Jezebel spirit? 2 murder charges?
Who knows? If he hires a good lawyer, hire Bruce Barquette. It'll be an acquittal. If he has enough money, Bruce Barquette and his law firm probably can get him acquitted. More coming up. This is Bob Joseph, serving America from a little radio studio in Binghamton, New York. Live and local, and we are joined now by Nick Parisi as he continues to make some of the final preparations for this year's Serling Fest in Binghamton. Mr. Parisi is president of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
Doing well. Things are getting crazy here, getting down to the home stretch for Serling Fest, but I think the train is going to reach the station in time.
We were excited when we found out about 24 hours ago that there was a very special delivery to Rec Park over on the west side, just a few blocks from where Rod Serling grew up on Bennett Avenue. The statue that we've been talking about for years has finally arrived in Rod Serling's park.
It has, and I'm very excited, obviously, and, it's been a long journey to get this done, and it is done. It is there where it belongs in Recreation Park, and we'll be doing the official unveiling and dedication of it on September 15th, a week from this Sunday, as part of our Serling Fest event.
This is the culmination of a process that's been going on for a long time. Tell us a little bit about all the work that's gone into it. Of course, lots of people have had this idea of honoring the memory of Rod Serling with a statue, but over the years, the ideas never really went forward, mainly because nobody could figure out how to come up with an appropriate statue to honor Mr. Serling and also come up with the money to make it happen. But eventually, it did happen. Tell us a little bit how this process got started to the point where in just over a week, the statue will be dedicated.
Well, the money issue was certainly a gigantic factor, and, it became the point where, this has been something that has, as you said, it's been on the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation's radar for quite some time, but I don't think it was kind of a pipe dream. We really didn't think we could make it happen, and at some point we finally just said, you know what, let's start a fundraiser, let's do a Kickstarter and see how much we can raise and see if we can do this. So we ran one Kickstarter a few years ago, and we came up short of our goal. And the way Kickstarters work is that, you either reach your goal or you don't. So it wasn't like we had, half the money that we would need. We had zero, so we came up short on that first one. But it generated a lot of interest in the idea, interest in the project, and particularly with Donna Lopardo, our, assemblywoman there. And she became involved, and we ran a second Kickstarter, and this one exceeded expectations. So we had essentially half of the money from the Kickstarter, and then Donna Lopardo was able to get us New York State grants for another chunk of it. And then we've been able to raise additional funds through other things like selling bricks that are going to be surrounding the statue and miniature busts of the head of the statue. So long story short, is we were able to raise the funds, and we think we've come up with a design that people are really going to be excited about. It's going to look great.
So once you were able to get the funding aspect secured, then how did you go about finding the right people who could get the job done? Right? Because it never occurred to me, if you wanted to have a statue honoring someone in Binghamton, not only would you have to move forward with the idea, come up with the necessary money, and then you'd have to find somebody who could actually do the job, because, at least for me, I've never ordered a statue. How did you go about finding the outfit to get the job done and do it in a way that would meet the budgetary side of it, but also come up with something that was respectable and appropriate to honor Rod Serling?
Yeah, well, we did. We did a whole lot of online searching. I can tell you that we searched around online for various sculptors, various artists, and I stumbled upon one that as simple as it sounds. Statues.com was the one we settled with. When I went to them and I saw some of their work, it turned out that they had done. I'm on Long Island, so it turned out that they had done a statue of Dwight Eisenhower in Eisenhower Park here. And I went to see that particular statue, and it just struck me that he was in a pose that I could see Rod Serling in. It was a really well done statue, and he was just in that pose where I said, yeah, I could just replace Rod Serling with this and very easily picture it. So I contacted them, and they turned out to be just an incredible firm to deal with, so easy to deal with. They were so open to our suggestions. I mean, this was not something that we took lightly. So they would give us a draft of the statue, and we would come back with suggestions, and they would give us another draft, and we would come back with more suggestions. And they never got frustrated with us. They dealt with us. At some point, Ann Serling flew out to Utah to see the statue as it was being created and gave them her opinion in person. So it really was a collaborative effort with us, with the board of the foundation, with Ann, and with the sculptors there. And we always knew we wanted to have Rod in his kind of classic standing pose that he would, normally present the Twilight Zone episode in. But the cap on that was that we included a doorway behind him, and the doorway has inscribed in it, you unlock this door with the key of imagination. And once we added that, we could see it was really a monument that was an exciting monument. It was really visually striking. And I think hopefully it's going to stand in Binghamton for 100 years.
It's interesting to me that the statue is not huge, but it is larger. It's a bit taller than Rod Serling was. Until I looked it up, I knew he was on the short side, but I didn't realize he apparently was 5 feet 4 inches tall and maybe weighed 140 pounds, which I think made him ideal for the military service he ultimately performed. But and I think we talked about this in a previous conversation, having an actual life-size statue of Rod Serling in Rec Park might have looked maybe just a little too small. Yeah, it would have been odd. Rod was about 5'5". I'll give him that extra inch, so he was about 5'5". And, we were originally looking even at maybe a 7-foot statue, so we were deciding between 7 feet and 6 feet. But pretty early on, the sculptors at statues.com told us, listen, if you want to make this 5'5", it's just not going to look right. It'll look even smaller than 5'5" when it just kind of almost psychologically, when you have a static object like a statue of a person and it's only 5'5", it'll look even smaller than that. So it's a little strange. But so we ended up, we decided on 6 feet, and the base for the statue is 18 inches. So that's 6.5 feet. That's 7.5 feet there. And then the door frame goes up a little bit higher than that. So all totaled, it's about 8 feet in total. So I take it you have actually seen the physical statue. Have you seen it in person, or have you only seen the photos of the completed statue?
I've only seen the photos, so I've not seen it in person. We've had a miniature replica of it, and pictures, but I have not seen the actual statue in person yet. So that means until about noon on Sunday, September 15th, you will not have actually laid eyes on the Rod Serling statue. You'll see it for the first time at the dedication ceremony. That is very true. Yes, and I can't wait. I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. It was exciting just to see that it finally had arrived. I had been keeping an eye on that spot in the park. I was pleased several weeks ago when the workers for a construction company in Owego had started to do some of the preliminary work for the base, for the concrete base, where the pedestal was placed. And they were so happy to be part of this project because they understood what this statue means to the community, means for the Binghamton area and the entire southern tier. And so they felt honored that they had an opportunity to play a part in the project. Well, that is so great to hear. It really is. That's, this is, the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation is gifting the statue to the city. So this statue, from September 15th onward, will belong to Binghamton, and that's as it should be. Rod Serling belonged to Binghamton. He loved his hometown, and this was our way of repaying some of that affection that he showed for Binghamton. And we hope that it becomes a tourist attraction. We hope it brings people and money and interest and excitement to the city. And we think it will. And we hope we'll do some more things in the future. But for now, we hope this is a good start. We've always known it as Recreation Park. Would you like to see the park perhaps renamed, maybe not drop Rec Park, but call it Rod Serling's Recreation Park or something that would acknowledge that Rod Serling lived about 3 blocks away on Bennett Avenue, and literally within walking distance of the park. Park and the amenities that helped inspire some of the Twilight Zone episodes, including the famous walking distance episode. Would you like to see the park named to reflect that Rod Serling once played there? We did explore that idea in the past, and the short answer is it turns out that it can't be. When the park was gifted to the city by George Johnson, it was one of the requirements was that it always remain Recreation Park. And we thought, yeah, maybe there might be a loophole there to call it Rod Serling's Recreation Park. But the city did not think that would be enough, and we understand that. So we're okay with that. But, with the statue there, I mean, we have the marker in the bandstand recognizing Rod Serling there. We have the carousel with the Twilight Zone artwork around the carousel. And there should also be a mural of Rod Serling that's going to be done at some point in the future in Recreation Park, probably on the side of the the housing of where the restrooms are. There'll be a mural of Rod Serling there. So all told, I think when you walk in, you'll realize that this is Rod Serling's park, even if it's not named for that.
What about adding a little sign below on both sides of the main park entrances on Beethoven Street and Laurel Avenue, where it says Recreation Park and City of Binghamton, just a little thing, dignified, white lettering on a blue background to match the existing signs, and something to the effect, Rod Serling played here.
Yeah, like Lincoln slept here. Yeah, I think that's certainly an idea. We have also toyed with the idea of renaming his street, Bennett Avenue, renaming that Rod Serling Way. And that's still a possibility as well. But, yeah, I think something acknowledging that Rod Serling played here, I think that's a great idea. We'll look into it.
If people want more information about Serling Fest that'll be held next weekend, how can they obtain that information about the events that'll be taking place, including the dedication at noon on Sunday, September 15th?
Well, pretty easy to remember. Just go to rodserling.com. That's where you would find most of the information. Or if you want to look us up on Facebook, we're very active on Facebook. And just very briefly, the Serling Fest is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday and Saturday will be at the Forum Theater. Friday night is a Rod Serling video marathon. Saturday is an all-day slate of events at the Forum Theater. And then Sunday, you need a ticket for Friday and Saturday, but Sunday is open to the public. So if you don't go to the Serling Fest Friday, Saturday, still come on down to Recreation Park. The dedication ceremony will begin around noon. We'll have some speakers there, and obviously we will unveil the statue, and we'll be spending, the rest of the day in Rec Park. So join us. It's going to be a really, really great celebration.
Nick Parisi is president of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Bob. Always appreciate it.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
1024, live and local. I'm Bob Joseph. This is Binghamton Now. We've been serving the community on WNBF for nearly a century. Now we turn the phone lines over to you. Time for the Stick to the Issues crowd to bring up some issues. Issues and answers. 607-772-1290. That's the number to call. Binghamton Now on WNBF. It's Friday morning, almost the weekend. The weekend will be here in 92 minutes. So if you need to know, now you do. Celebrate the weekend responsibly, please. Here's the forecast from the National Weather Service. Mostly sunny today, 79. Increasing clouds tonight, 58. A chance of showers and thunderstorms tomorrow, 64. Sunny Sunday, 66. And Monday will be nice, too, for those of you who work a 4-day week. If you're off on Monday, sunny, 73. Right now it's 63 in downtown Binghamton, 17 Celsius here at WNBF Global Headquarters. The air still seems to be almost pristine. Air quality index here in Binghamton, 36, and they claim that's good. Great. It's been fortunate this summer that we have not had to put up with a lot of smoke from wildfires. Hopefully it'll stay that way. It's really concerned several months ago that this summer would turn out to be a repeat or maybe even worse than some of the really awful-looking days. Remember June of last year when, for the first part of June, we were breathing in delightful and deadly smoke from Canada. But fortunately, it didn't happen this year yet. It's 10:29. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you coming from? Where are you calling from?
Well, I wish you good morning, too. And my name is John, and where I'm coming from will leave to the rest of the call, but I'm in Binghamton right now.
Welcome, John, and thank you for calling our program. We appreciate the support.
Yes, anything I can do for your career and for the WNBF radio, I will do.
We need all the help we can get, Johnny.
I have a third phone license, if that's...
Yeah, it'll situate you up at the transmitter, so every evening when we switch to night pattern, right at sunset, you could take transmitter readings up there on Ingram Hill.
Well, I think, we've got a congressional hot race here. I think that should be a major issue. Let WNBF be WNBF and not go to the night pattern.
I agree. In fact, I think the federal government should allow WNBF to broadcast on AM 1290 at 100,000. No, let's think big. 500,000 watts, like some of the Mexican stations did back in the 60s. Those Mexican blowtorches that were just south of the border. So they'd be booming in 500,000 watts into California and other parts of the southwestern U.S.
Sure. Well, but they don't have to do that anymore, because if you drive over the George Washington Bridge and you fool around with the AM dial, all you're really going to hear is Spanish, except for WABC and
a couple other languages. There are a lot of other operators who have basically sold their frequencies or leased their frequencies to certain, in some cases, religious programming or ethnic programming. So it's true. Aside from, I'd say, WABC, WOR, Bloomberg station there at 1050. Oh, no, it's ESPN. It's hard to keep track, but you're right. Not many English-speaking voices in the tri-state area anymore on AM.
Yes, and, I want to talk, the Rod Sterling statue got me thinking, and I'm not, leave that out of the mix right now. When is a park finished? A park is supposed to be tranquil, and all these improvements in Rec Park, did it make it better? Everything from the multi-million-dollar tennis court to this absurd ice skating pad, and now they want to junk up Round Top. Can anything be left alone?
No.
No.
You ask a question, I gave you an answer. The simple answer is no, absolutely not. Nothing is going to be left alone. There's always, as long as there is the potential for state and federal money, and as long as there are elections, you can bet, whether it's a park or any other public facility, the job is never done. Well,
it's sort of like this UE junking up what was the EJ property.
Oh, yeah, they turned it into Tigerland.
Yeah.
It looks like a division of Walt Disney Company.
Yeah, aesthetically, there's a point, Bob, where customization just ruins everything. There was nothing wrong with UE High School. I'm sure you went to. You went to UE? Did you, Bob?
Yeah, back before it turned into some sort of. Like I say, I drive by, and don't get me wrong, the people who designed the recent, well, I guess it's completed or nearly completed park between the high school and the school district administration building. It turned out nice, but again, when I went to school, Johnny, I
those
used to
big oak trees, right?
Yes, the oak trees were fine. I used to cut through that property. I would. This is back in the day when I enjoyed walking almost every day. I would walk from UE High School about nearly 2 miles to my home for lunch and then walk back. That was the way I went through. You know, the little parking lot there next to what is now the administration building, and the place where that's now Tigerland.
Yeah, well, it's all. It seems to me all out of proportion to what it was, and as far as the school campuses and the athletic fields and everything else. But what is taught in the classrooms? You know, if you go to the remnants of the dirt floor schools in the Caribbean, you will see alert people learning the King's English and other things still to this day. If you go into our school, you can't go probably a minute or two without discussing some aspect of the crotch. So I think it's time to put things back into proportion as this will never be the Valley of Opportunity anymore, quite simply because the institutional, the governmental presence is so overwhelming the town that they're and paralyzing it and strangling it. There is no opportunity for the private sector growth.
The private sector for the last 30 or 40 or 50 years, private sector in the Binghamton region has failed to step up to the plate. That's why that we need and embrace all of the funding that we get, whether it's from Albany or D.C. We appreciate whether Village of Endicott, Town of Union, Johnson City, City of Binghamton, Owego. I mean, every community really appreciates every delicious funding morsel. We need it. We need the money, John.
Well,
we need it.
All these failed, but you don't get the money for being successful. You get the money.
I know how it works. I look, you and I didn't make the rules, but here's the thing. As bad as the rules are, if you want some money from Albany or from D.C., you have to take a close look at the rules and then understand how the rules and regulations are set up and the restrictions and deadlines, and find yourself a person who's good at being a grant writer and seeking the money that's available. And with the understanding, and this is the truth, I don't necessarily like it, but you will concede when people say, well, if we don't get this money to improve our streets or our downtown district or come up with a better park, if we don't get it, then some other place in New York State will.
Well, that's the looters mentality.
Absolutely, and I'm in favor of that.
Since what?
And again, the only reason I'm in favor of that is because that's the game. It'd be like me complaining about the Super Bowl, and I don't like the Super Bowl because they break it up into quarters. I'd rather have the Super Bowl be done in 3 periods so we could have 2 entertainment portions during the Super Bowl. But my complaining about it isn't going to change it, just like our complaining about the rules that govern the assistance that we can receive from New York State or from the federal government. We could complain and we could send telegrams and emails and postcards to our elected officials. That won't change it. They can't change it. This is the game as it has evolved, and basically you got to be in it to win it. If you want your community to get its fair share of the pot of gold, then you gotta understand the rules, and then raise your hand and be polite and say, please, sir, or please, ma'am, may we have some money so we could beautify this park, so we could make George F. Johnson look presentable, so we can celebrate our heritage. See, I have no problem with celebrating our heritage. In a perfect world, we would celebrate our heritage using only private funding, but that private money is not there.
Well, it would be there, but when you get to the point of where you have a total $70 million government share of the Oakdale Commons, which might have the same square footage, but it has a lot less stores in it now.
But you have to admit it looks nicer.
It looks terrible.
John. They put up the bars there on the south end to make it look somewhat like that prison in Auburn.
Well,
to me, when I drive by there, when I'm going to Wegmans for a newfangled sub, I drive by there and I say, oh, look, Richard's House of Fun has like a prison yard. And I think that serves as a valuable lesson to our young people. If you don't obey the law and you wind up being convicted of 34 felonies, you may wind up playing 30 minutes a day in a yard just like that at a federal detention center. You don't have to take your kid to Auburn to point out the correctional facility and say, oh, yeah, look at the yard, look at the razor wire. And if you're doing a long term and work your way up and are on the list of good behavior, you could start making license plates like your Uncle Ralph.
Well, I ask this question facetiously. I mean, does Johnson City have a planning department? I mean, how could you have all those parking spaces when it was a mall, and now you're going to have a residential complex? You're going to have all these things.
And a Chick-fil-A open 7 days a week.
Yeah. No, that's, Bob, what I'm getting at is this. You know, in the 70s, people would go out and they'd buy expensive cars like Lincolns and Cadillacs. And then they would go to Grandway and get these stick-on letters, you know, and try to personalize the front door with their initials on it. Well, this is the same thing, Bob, that they're doing to these beautiful parks, and they're allowing in the commercial development. These are ugly eyesores. It's ugly, ugly, ugly around here. You don't have to drive too far to see better things. You can drive to Syracuse, you can drive to Corning, you can drive to all these nice places where they're making progress. And by the way, Bob, news from Scranton, $600 million into Geisinger for the hospital. You know, this is opposed to the $150 million here. But all these, the point I want to make is this: all these failed cities, you know, from Gary, Indiana to Binghamton, operate more or less on the same level of governance, and they want failure to continue. And that's why Mayor Bucci wrote a letter to City Council opposing. Imagine this: Mayor Bucci, who fought term limits with taxpayer money and lost, Mayor Bucci is opposed to the city manager form of government. You know why I think these elected officials would be opposed to it, especially ex-mayors, is because a city manager, lickety-split, would show them and show the public once and for all what failures these people were, how they couldn't execute anything, how they couldn't administrate anything, how they couldn't think their way out of a paper bag.
All right, well, we'll see. I should get the former mayors on the program, all the former mayors to call in to see what they think about the city manager form of government, see if they all feel the same way. Or, I mean, it's easy to think that all of our former mayors who are still with us might oppose switching over to a city manager form of government. You might think that. I mean, it's certainly understandable why the current mayor would not embrace the concept of switching over to a city manager type of government for Binghamton. I understand that. But I'm wondering if all of our living former mayors also feel that way. It's 10:43 at WNBF. Well, if they're listening, they can call us at 607-772-1290. I'm Bob Joseph. You're listening to Binghamton Now on WNBF. 10:45, having conversations here at the radio station. That's what they do here. I was listening to a station today. I won't name the station because I want to respect their privacy, but they are a station in Pennsylvania, actually not so far from here, and they were granted, because they're in Pennsylvania, they were granted 7 minutes with the Democratic vice presidential candidate this morning. So, say if I was running a station, say Halstead Now or Susquehanna Now, and I was broadcasting primarily to a Pennsylvania audience, I too could have had an exclusive interview with the Democratic vice presidential candidate this morning and asked him all the important questions within 7 minutes. But obviously New York means nothing in the overall scheme of the presidential election. So, maybe I should just, between now and Election Day, maybe I should just go and move to Scranton. Do Scranton now, and then November 6th, come back here and resume Binghamton now. So I, too, could have an exclusive interview with the Democratic vice presidential candidate and even the Republican vice presidential candidate. Oh, those radio hosts in Pennsylvania, they're so fortunate. Hi, WNBF, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
You rang?
Yes, thank you. So, former Binghamton Mayor Matthew Ryan, shockingly, was listening to the program when I brought up the matter of a city manager form of government, which is being considered. Is that something that you think ought to be considered potentially for Binghamton in the future?
Well, we already had this discussion. I think we should always look into ways we can improve government. Here's what, the thing about having a city manager is running a city government is they usually have special training. I mean, you interview the person, you find out what their experience is when you're hiring them, and they usually have special training areas such as managing money and city planning. On the other hand, a person elected mayor could be as young as 18 years old and have no experience whatsoever. So that's an extreme, obviously, but a disadvantage of the city manager, municipal government, is that the city manager is not directly responsible to the electorate, which a lot of people like having that arrangement. But, there's many, as John says, what we should do is, if have a maybe task force to, if people really want to think about the best way to run their city, have a task force that looks, studies, and we have all sorts of people from the university that could do research on this, look at the cities that have city manager over many years versus mayors and see how it's worked out and see what the pros and cons are, and then go into it with a good idea of, what the pros and cons are and whether, and really, ultimately, it's going to be the electorate that decides whether you go that direction because there would have to be a referendum. So, that's what I think about that. But I hope I can talk about a couple other things.
Well, it's your show. I'm just the facilitator. So, yeah, we have until noon, so start talking.
Okay. A couple things is it was very interesting to me. Well, first of all, on the gun issue, we will never, until we have people like, why isn't Mark Molinaro saying, I am sick of this. I'm going to propose a bill, that has sensible gun control legislation for our country. It happened after Ronald Reagan got shot. We finally had an assault ban on weapons, but sunset after 10 years. Everybody say, and then J.D. Vance. Every time he opens his mouth, it really makes me ill because he's talking about we should have a tremendous amount of increase in school resource officers. Well, I'm not going against school resource officers, and certain school districts should decide what they want for their school district, and certain fits might be.
Well, why not have one SRO per classroom?
Yeah, you can't exactly. And the other thing is, what if yes, they were heroic and they confronted that guy. But what if the kid was the kind of kid who was like a Rambo type kid who just blew them away with the AR-16 when they confronted him? They wouldn't be talking about how effective resource officers were. They got lucky that this kid wasn't on a suicide mission and put down his gun when they confronted him. If he was a Rambo type guy, they'd be dead. So, because it was a gun, they didn't have AR-16s. The kid had the AR-16 type rifle. So, so it's just, come on. Like the guy who was on earlier really had some great things about, school resource officers are okay, but if you look at the literature, it's not the end-all or be-all. Yes, we need protection, especially in certain districts where you might be more likely to have weapons coming into a school. You have to be vigilant in every way you can, but it's so much more than that. So the real deal is if politicians would stop just taking all the contributions from the NRA, say we're not taking any more money from you. We're going to.
No, I think they should continue to take as much money from the NRA. They don't have to. They should take the money, and then say, "Oh, we got your money," but that doesn't mean we have to vote the way you want us to. Give us money, give us millions of dollars, because that's the American way. And by the way, you as a former mayor, as a politician, you understand how the government works in this country, and you understand how elections work. Money talks, no one walks. Yeah, and the biggest thing, of course, why I on the radio would say keep money in politics. I mean, the media, both traditional and new media, need that money. I mean, the media, that's the mother's milk of the media, especially TV. What would Channel 12 do, or what would Channel 34 or Channel 40 do without the political money that they're going to be raking in this year, especially since they do happen to be in a market on the Pennsylvania border? This means millions of dollars to Binghamton broadcasters, Matthew.
Look, they're still going to, even if you have politicians that actually do the moral and right thing instead of just following the money, there's still going to be elections, and there's still going to be...
Oh, yeah, money. And I want them to always do the moral and ethical thing. I'm saying when it comes to money, the NRA and every organization, every legal organization in this country ought to give as much as they can to every candidate so the candidates can help support radio, TV stations, and even newspapers. That's what it's about.
Well, nobody's disagreeing with you. If we have publicly... the progressive view is to have publicly funded elections so that people can speak their mind and not be, that's why Josh Riley is, if he's telling the truth, he's not taking a penny of PAC money or anything like that. And he says, my vote's not for sale, So those are the kinds of politicians we need. But this all boils down to Republicans are the ones that won't allow sensible gun control. Republicans are the ones that allowed billions and billions of dollars of unrecognized identifiable money to come into our political system. And yes, Democrats have embraced that, because if they didn't, they couldn't have a chance of winning an election. But they're not the ones. Democrats are not the ones that brought us Citizens United, and which gave PACs could spend as much money as they wanted, and we won't even know until after the election who's given the money.
All right, but again, I say the more money, the merrier. Again, I'm not saying that makes for the best government, but it makes for better media. More people in the media will have jobs. I mean, certainly, just because the TV stations during this election cycle here in Binghamton are going to rake in millions of dollars, that doesn't mean they're going to hire more or better reporters, but they could use that money for that.
Well, I hear you talk out of both sides of your mouth, because you're always railing, everybody, and rightfully so, is railing against, stations that just give opinion and not news, and that's all about money too. So when are we going?
Well, no, I'm talking about cable news, and one of the things that I've pointed out, since cable news became competitive in 1996 after CNN no longer had a monopoly on cable news, when MSNBC and Fox News started in 1996, that's when they needed appointment viewing. Therefore, the opinion shows, especially at night, because, as you know, Matthew, there aren't that many people who are really that interested in news to keep watching 24/7 cable news throughout the year. That's why you need people like Hannity and Olbermann and Maddow and who's that other kid? Oh, Tucker Carlson. You need people like that to attract regular viewers, because if all you had was nothing but 24/7 news, it wouldn't be sustainable.
Well, I disagree with you totally.
Well, you can. I just told you the truth, though. You can disagree vehemently if you wish, and I know because of your personality you may disagree vehemently, but that doesn't make it right.
Well, it doesn't make you right because you disagree with me.
No, I didn't say. I've said since the inception of this program that my opinion is only my opinion. I'm not saying that I am the be-all and end-all. I'm saying on this particular issue, my assessment of the cable news business is more realistic than your assessment.
Well, your assessment is just saying that it's okay for it to be the way it is.
No, I didn't say it's okay. No, I don't think it's okay. I'm telling you, this is a dollars and cents issue. No, I would prefer, Matt, you know me enough to know that I really like news. I would prefer, all things being equal, if CNN and Fox every night from 8 to 11 actually had hours of hard-hitting news that would serve America. But those channels, they're not looking to attract just me and you. They're looking to attract millions of viewers, and there are not, on a typical weeknight, there are not sufficient numbers of people who would sit and watch all news on CNN or Fox or MSNBC.
Well, I tend to agree with you if you accept the model that's there. But I believe, for instance, how many people tune into if they have time and it fits into their schedule because it is good news. How many people tune into CBS Sunday Morning? It's a uplifting hour and a half.
I know, and it's a gem. It's a true gem. It may be the best newscast put forward by a commercial network, and shockingly, CBS hasn't, although they've tweaked it and changed it, it's not like it was 30 or 40 years ago. They've still maintained the basic concept because, people like that. It's a breath of fresh air.
Right. So if we combined, if you come up with somebody that comes up with a model where, yes, you do some of the talking head stuff, but then you intertwine it with, there's so many great stories out there that people, that would uplift people and tell people.
The problem with reporting those stories is it's expensive. Well, see, the thing is, here's another part that I didn't mention about opinion shows or talking heads. Not right. David Byrne and those talking heads, but the talking heads who wind up on cable TV or on the Sunday shows. That is cheap. That's cheap programming. You just call the usual suspects. You use, we get, one guy on the so-called conservative side and one guy on the so-called progressive side, and they'll either come on for free because they just like the being seen on TV or for a nominal fee. That kind of program is cheap, and compared to original reporting, there is another aspect that we could talk about for a long time. Fortunately, we've got to wrap up this segment. I hope you have a good weekend.
Okay, thank you. You too.
And that's another thing. You have to understand or try to appreciate the economics of journalism and the economics of broadcasting. The money side, trust me, it's not pretty. 10:59, Bob Joseph, WNBF. Oh, I'm ready for the weekend. What a long week this has been. Feels like an eternity. And yet, even so, it also has moved by quickly. How odd is that? Paul in West Windsor, you're on the air.
Hey, Bob, I don't like to call in unless I have something of value to contribute to the conversation. One time we talked about the pleasure principle, and we were talking about these kids and why they do these crazy things. And I don't think the parents have enough psychology to understand the pleasure principle in their kids. They get pleasure out of the things they do just like we do. There's the Sigmund Freud, the id, the ego, and the superego, and the subconscious mind. I think if parents knew a little more psychology, they could give their kids something where they would choose the right things to give them pleasure. This kid was playing video games, and he was shooting and killing people and everything, and I'm sure he enjoyed it. And then he brought it into the real reality and started doing it. I don't think the father realized what was going on. He just thought, well, maybe I can get closer to the kid. But you got to understand psychology. I mean, I took a course in psychology and I read a book on Sigmund Freud. The ego and the superego, the subconscious mind, they're so important. The pleasure principle. So parents got to instead of getting a psychologist, they're going to have to become psychologists and pay attention to their kids. And if they're hurting a kitty cat,
yeah, and don't give their kids guns.
Right, and
don't give your kid a gun for Christmas.
No, that's right. But at an early age, you gotta turn them in the right direction. Don't hurt a little doggy. Don't hurt a little cat. Don't kill ants. Don't kill bees. You got to be a psychologist as a parent. You got to find out if the kid has abnormal tendencies. Like he said, this kid was playing these video games all the time, and he was worried about it. So what do you think, Bob?
I agree. Don't buy your kid a video game. No video games until you're 21. No guns till you're 21. Look, I'm not against guns or video games, but in the hands of people under 21, it's inappropriate.
I agree. Absolutely. That's the big preventative. People don't let their kids play those bad games.
I've seen some of those bad games, and man, they're bad.
And this kid, I'm sure that's what drove him to it.
Probably. So maybe the video game makers will get sued.
I think they should sue them.
We live in a litigious society. I predict the video game makers will get sued. I predict whoever made that gun that he got for Christmas. And again, talk about a war on Christmas. There's a real war on Christmas that Sean Hannity doesn't dare touch on because it would offend all his viewers. But there's a true war on Christmas if you're giving your teenager a gun. That's not the meaning of Christmas.
Well, the purpose of my call was to make parents aware of the signs of something that their child is doing that could lead to destructive behavior.
I agree. But that means parents need parents need parenting classes.
Yes, they do. Psychology too.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, have a good day.
Thank you. Yeah, parents. Not all of this comes naturally. Maybe for some people. I know for some people they can be good parents and they didn't need any sort of special guidance. I mean, I've seen people who've become really good parents and they didn't have to go to a special class to learn how to do it because some of it, not all of it, involves common sense. But then not everybody has the same level of common sense. Not everybody has been fortunate to see good parenting exhibited. You're more likely, I think, to be a good parent if you had good parents. If you grew up in a home where your mother or father, or these days your mothers and your fathers, weren't good parents, well, then what kind of a parent might you be? If you didn't have a good role model, you might not be a good parent, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person, but it means that you're going to have to learn some parenting skills elsewhere. It's 11:16 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hello, this is Jim calling from West Endicott.
Morning, Jim. What's going on there? Are you anywhere near North Page Avenue?
Well, I'm heading towards Arthur Ave, actually.
All right.
I'm en route there. I'm going to be there in about 5 minutes.
Did they put the silo back up over at Felix Roma's? Is the silo back up?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I'm not sure.
All right. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to call in and respond to the former guy when he called in and he was talking about the AR-16. I just wanted to kind of correct him on that. The AR-16 was an Armalite rifle. It was designed in very late 50s, and it was actually sold to other developing countries, and they ended up discontinuing it because they didn't really get any really good sales out of it. And there is a world of difference between an AR-16 and an AR-15. AR-16 actually fires 7.62 millimeter ammo, which is similar to what the AK-47 fires, whereas the AR-15 fires the 5.56, which is similar to what the M16 fires.
So the AR-15, if you want to kill people at school, the AR-15 is not as good?
Well,
I mean, say if you're a troubled person, you're a troubled teenager, and you want to kill people at school, which one would a troubled teen opt for that would cause maximum carnage?
I don't know. I personally think a shotgun would probably be a lot easier myself. But
who knows? I don't know. Maybe he would have used that if his father gave him a shotgun for Christmas.
Well, his father was definitely irresponsible with what he did.
Allegedly. He's innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. So same with the alleged shooter. He's innocent. You know, he's, of course, as always is the case, the suspect has been convicted in the court of public opinion, but in the real court, he's still innocent. So who knows? Maybe if he gets a good attorney, maybe an attorney can work out some kind of deal. So, you know, if he does 2 or 3 years in some sort of youth home, he could be released in time to vote for the 2028 election.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting what some of the relatives have also said about that he was troubled and that they're kind of inferring that there were some problems in the home with the dad. So I guess it'll all eventually come out in the wash. But anyways, Bob, thanks for taking my call.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Or Jim. Thank you, Jim. It's 11:19 at WNBF. So what do you think? That's a question for the Stick to the Issues crowd. See, that's what we do now in the program. This is a program of issues. It's not a program of personalities. Issues and answers. So if you're part of the Stick to the Issues crowd, call us at 607-772-1290. Binghamton Now. Remember, it sounds even better. Sounds good on the free WNBF app. Let's go back to the phones. Nicole in Whitney Point, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I have a comment on the shootings that we're having in America. It's not the guns that do the shooting. It's the mentally impaired people that do the shooting. And maybe we need to stick to that issue, is how we're going to save the people and get them the help that they need.
And how are we going to keep the guns out of their hands? Because a mentally ill person armed with a squirt gun is probably not going to cause too much harm unless they load the gun with something other than water. But say a person who buys one of those AR-15s or some other weapon that you can get on Nanacoke Avenue in Endicott, you know, in the hands of the wrong person, I mean, obviously a lot of people, even dozens of people, could be killed. So how do we go about keeping those weapons out of the hands of troublemakers?
I'm not sure the exact extent that we can go to in America to take all the guns, because there are very conscientious gun owners that own guns. So you're going to take the guns from every single person so that nobody will steal it or get their hands on it? I don't understand what you guys propose to do with the guns.
What guys? What guys?
Anybody in America that is against guns. And they can take knives. They can get.
Well, that's true. If this suspect named Colt, I mean, at least his dad didn't name him after a knife. But if this suspect in the shooting at the school had a knife, you know, maybe more people would have been killed.
Exactly. So you're going to take the knives out of everybody's home? If you're if you're in a mental state to do harm, you're going to do it no matter what. So
that's kind of like what the Republican candidate for vice president said. He basically said school shootings are a fact of life.
They shouldn't be a fact of life.
Well, he said it. I didn't say it. I'm not dumb enough to say that school shootings are a fact of life. That's what he said.
Well, you have a nice day.
It's 11:24 at WNBF. The Republican candidate for vice president said he lamented that school shootings are a fact of life. He said the United States needs to harden security to prevent more carnage like the shooting that left 4 dead in Georgia. He said, if these psychos are going to go after our kids, We've got to be prepared for it. We don't have to like the reality that we live in, but it is the reality we live in. It's a fact of life. It's like a TV series, a bad TV series. Gary from the South Side, you're on the air.
Yes, that's absolutely true. You did say that's a fact of life.
I mean, what kind of an American would say that, especially if he wants to be a heartbeat away from the presidency?
Well, Trump said, get over it.
He wouldn't say that.
He did. He said...
You're telling me that Donald Trump, the short-fingered vulgarian, actually said get over it when it comes to school shootings?
Well, Lauren Boebert said, she says, well, that's nothing, the school shootings, compared to the million aborted babies in the United States.
Yeah, well, that reminds me, Beetlejuice is preparing in theaters nationwide. So what else is on your mind?
Well, I want to talk about the city manager.
Yeah, what do you think? Good idea?
Yeah, absolutely excellent idea. And let me tell you why. I've spent many, many years studying the city of Binghamton. And what I've found out is that why it doesn't work like other cities. Why we are not clean and we're not this, we're not that, we're this. And I found out that, well, it's there's three things. Political cronyism is one reason. Political nepotism is the other reason, and we have unqualified department heads that are politically appointed by whoever becomes the mayor. Okay, none of them have really any resumes that would qualify them for their job. A city manager would be responsible for looking over resumes and hiring qualified department heads, water, sewer, parks, etc. Okay, qualified people. And the city council should also have the rights to fire these people. Okay, we've had a lot of firings in the past, department heads doing this, doing that, and it's all political appointed, and they show up at the department and go, hey, I've just been appointed by the mayor, I'm the new department head. And then the rest of the department says, well, you know what, we've been doing the same thing for years and years and years. You really don't have to do anything. You don't have to know anything. This is how we run. This is how we operate. And it's really a bureaucracy that has taken over our departments in the department. That's why we don't move forward. There's no new ideas. We can't practice any ideas from other cities. I mean, the smoke detector law, that was something we should have had on the books a long time ago, but we copied it from Elmira. There's plenty of successful programs in other cities that we can bring to the table, but we can't because the department heads are politically appointed, friends, nieces, relatives.
And assorted hangers-on.
And it goes on and on and on, political donors, kids, hey, could you give my son a job, blah, blah, blah. And these people they just come to work. I mean, they have no direction, the city, they have no track record. So a city manager could be the person to hire qualified department heads and put this city back together and do things what other cities do. But the council has no authority over these department heads, and so they have no control. The city council is just kind of like sitting there like, oh, okay, well, the mayor does all the appointees, and they're only accountable to the mayor. And, political nepotism. I mean, we got it right in the mayor's office. This is why the city does not work.
Well, why does city council sit back and take it? I mean, we have a city council now that is 6 out of 7 city council members are with the opposition party. Why don't they serve as some sort of, perform some checks and balances to make sure everybody who is working in any capacity for the city of Binghamton is the best and the brightest?
They don't have the power. We need the city manager. We need a city manager to hold these departments and be responsible for everything that goes on. And the city manager is going to be responsible for everything that goes on, and it's going to be answerable to the city council. The city council is This is why it doesn't work. We haven't changed anything in this city since 1950.
Well, it just occurred to me maybe city council doesn't want that responsibility.
I think they're talking about it. I know they want that.
Well, I know they're talking about it, but I'm wondering at the end of the day, I'm wondering if the individual city council members, the 7 members on city council, want to have that awesome responsibility, because then when things go wrong, as they occasionally will, then people might actually hold city council responsible. Say if the streets this winter aren't plowed after we get 40 inches of snow, maybe city council members will be blamed for allowing the operation not to be as good as it should have been, instead of holding, say, the mayor accountable. Or remember, what was it, a couple of years ago, after a particularly less than stellar performance of snow removal, a couple of Public Works officials, I believe the commissioner and deputy commissioner, had to leave early because people were mad about the snow removal.
They were fired. They were unqualified. I would rather hold people, here we talk about holding people responsible for their mistakes. I want to hold people responsible for doing the right things. I want a progressive, like you're a progressive liberal. I want some solutions. I want to move forward, not go. We haven't moved forward in this city at all. Now, the Republican machine is in full control, zoning, BLDC, all the departments that are supposed to be helping us, okay, are under the thumbs of the Republican Party. And you know what? You can't prove me wrong.
No, but there are more enrolled Democrats in Binghamton than Republicans, so how come Binghamton's Democrats don't do something about it?
I think they're infiltrated by the Republicans, too. I'm not sure that...
Are you talking that there are actually Republicans who have figuratively gotten into sheep's clothing and are now pretending to be Democrats, that they're Democrats in name only?
Yeah, let me give you an example. I was a sign guy for Galazzano when he ran for governor, Thomas Galazzano. And I was the guy here doing all the work on his behalf, and I put up signs everywhere. And he did really well in Broome County, by the way. And then they got a party line called the Independence line, okay, put on the ballot because we've had so many votes on the Galazzano. So that gave us a new line at the ballot box. And then along comes Sheriff Elliott, who ran as an independent and got almost got elected. And he wrote a letter to the heads up in Rochester there of the newly formed Independence Party and said he would be the guy for the job. And he was a Republican, but he got all those write-in votes, and he said he was the guy for the job. And what they do, they took that independence line and they ran Republicans on it, Republican, and they had Republicans on the family choice line and Republicans on the Republican line. And that party line went away because there was nobody voting on it. They were voting the other Republican lines. When you got one Republican on 3 different lines, you get to pick only one. And that's why the Independence Party disappeared. The Republicans actually invaded and took away that line.
Right, they hijacked.
They hijacked. We don't want that. We don't want no independence, and they're out of here.
Well, of course they're going to do. They're going to do what they need to do. I mean,
I know, but stick with your own line. Okay, do they have to infiltrate, other parties?
Well, the answer is yes, they have to.
It's all dirty tricks.
It's not just dirty tricks. It's money. It's money and power.
And that's what the Republican Party stands for. But you got to understand, I got to tell the Republicans, if you want to live like a Republican, you better vote Democrat.
All right. I appreciate your call. It's 11:34. This is the program that deals with the issues. The other shows deal with personalities. WNBF's Binghamton Now is the issues program. So for the stick to the issues crowd, this is it, folks. For the people who are just portraying that they're victims or they're whiners and they think everything is rigged, that's for all the other programs. Those programs are for the people who can't handle the truth. 607-772-1290. Bob Joseph live on your radio on a Friday morning. The weekend begins in less than half an hour. But who's counting? 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, online at WNBF.com. Still time to call in and express your opinion. Guess everybody is over the Spygate scandal that exploded this week and caused new questions to be directed to Kathy Hochul and Andrew Cuomo. How dare you? How dare you hire people who are working for the Chinese government? Please, Kathy Hochul, Andrew Cuomo, answer some questions about why the Chinese operatives are working in state government. Back to the phones we go. Good morning, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Nikki from Johnson City.
Morning, what's up?
Do you think that Trump is not associated with Project 2025?
No, of course he is.
I mean, I think that it's crazy to me that this man can just say certain things that are blatantly not true, and people believe it. And I mean, I think it just goes back to the old saying, like, if you say it loud enough and long enough, people will believe you.
Well, that used to be true. And 23% of adult Americans who live outside New York State may tend to believe him. But most Americans, most people over 18, understand that this guy has a record. The thing is, his reputation precedes him. So for 77% of American adults, they understand. And so he could say anything. He could even say, wow, today is a beautiful day in Binghamton, and it's a magnificent September Friday. And 23% of the people would believe him. 77% of our listeners would say, I don't believe him, even though in this case it would happen to be true. But sadly, he's damaged his reputation to the point where 3/4 of American adults are not likely to believe anything he says.
I heard that 78.23% of statistics are made up on the spot, Bob.
I heard that too, and I believe actually 99%. I think the actual figure would be 99.1%. Or if you're listening to the Hawk, 98.1%.
That's great. Hey, anytime I've ever voted, I'm an independent. So anytime I've ever voted, I vote for the person and what appears to be their intentions. And so I have voted red and blue on my voting registration, at times in my life. I've never just said I'm voting all red or all blue. However, with this election, I think I may just vote all blue because I think there's a lot at stake this year.
Well, there's a lot at stake, and that's why some Republicans really are worried that not only will the Democrats retain control of the Senate, but that they're likely to gain control of the House. And in January, Binghamton University graduate Hakeem Jeffries will be the new Speaker of the House. That's what some Republicans are worried about.
Right.
And I, for one, couldn't be happier for Hakeem Jeffries because anybody who goes to Binghamton University and is as successful as Mr. Jeffries has been, he deserves our respect. And I think he has put in the time and the effort, and he has shown that he is very intelligent. He understands the issues. He understands the needs of the people in Binghamton and beyond. So I think he'll make a great Speaker of the House.
I actually agree with that, and I think we could take a little pride in that if that happens. Bob, I really enjoy your show. I call in time to time when I can catch it. I, unfortunately, have to go pay my mechanic, Randy, at New York Radiator on Susquehanna Street. However, I would like to give a big shout-out to him and the crew. They came through clutch. We just had a problem, and they picked it up and fixed it in 1 hour off the tow truck. So New York Radiator's where it's at, guys.
Okay, and my tip of the hat to them. I haven't dealt with them personally, but I know people who have, and I appreciate the work that they continue to do here in downtown Binghamton. If they're listening or if they have friends who are listening, we do appreciate the people who are working hard every day at local businesses.
Yeah, support local businesses, Bob. Have a great Friday, buddy.
Thank you. 1141 WNBF. I might stop by over. I haven't been over there on Susquehanna Street. I've been on Susquehanna Street, but I haven't been in that particular area in several weeks. I drive through, but not out of the newsmobile. Maybe I'll pop in and say hi this afternoon, the folks over there. It's 11:42 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, good morning there, Bob. It's Dave from Vestal. How's it going?
Oh, it's going well.
Yeah, I've been listening. It's going. I almost made it to the end without calling, Bob. But this last caller, how many times have I railed against people just going in and doing straight ticket voting, Bob, right down the line, and too lazy to do their homework on each individual? They just straight ticket, and you can't do that. If you do that, then all you're doing is just harming the country.
I think the caller said that's not typically how it's handled, but this year is an exception given the unique set of circumstances. What we have here, I'm afraid, when you look at what the Republicans have, for whatever reason, put on a platter for the American voters, I think a lot of Americans are not going to buy what the GOP is cooking.
Yeah, well.
Hey, don't blame me. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't pick the presidential candidate or the vice presidential candidate. I will stipulate, in my personal opinion, that there may be hundreds or even thousands of Republicans in this country who are way more qualified than Donald Trump or Johnny Vance. Excuse me, J.D. Vance.
Yeah, J.D. Clampett, too. Don't forget him, Bobby. Keep forgetting him. Hey, and that other caller, too, Bob, about appointing people when you're just appointing unqualified people. I could have swore. I sounded just like the Democrats appointing unqualified Kamala. The same thing. And him saying...
No, she wasn't appointed. She wound up in a situation beyond her control. She had no control that, unfortunately, Joe Biden, our hero from Scranton, is no longer able to serve as the most powerful person on the planet. Even Joe Biden came to the belated realization that he was, as they say at this point, in over his head. He could no longer continue in this role for another 4 years. So he graciously stepped aside, and Kamala Harris graciously saw the situation, and instead of saying, I want none of this. I don't want to be the most powerful person on the planet. I'll turn that over to RFK Jr. And she could have. But thankfully, she didn't.
Bob, for it to be legitimate, Biden had to step down right out of office.
Well, he should have. I agree with that. If that is a good point. If he concluded that he's unfit to be elected to a second term, at that point, he also should have said, and I hereby resign the presidency effective immediately, and then had the Jeanine Pirro come in and administer the oath of office to Kamala Harris. I would have watched that.
And that would stop people like me from saying that she was installed or just, appointed.
But you still would be opposed to her.
Oh, big time.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say. So in the end, it makes no difference. No matter how they did it, no matter how you slice it, people still don't like Kamala Harris, no matter how this thing was orchestrated. And yes, it was orchestrated. But what can you do? Biden was not fit. Again, by all rights, Mr. Biden should not be president at the moment. Kamala Harris should be president after Joe Biden stepped down because he realized he just doesn't have what it takes right now to be the most powerful person in cable news. Oh no, that's Hannity. Sorry. I'm trying to have some fun. Laugh at my pathetic jokes. Come on.
Hey, that other comment too by the same caller, Bob, that where he said we need more liberal progressives around here running things. That we don't need that here.
This area has next to no liberals or progressives running anything. Point to any government unit in the Binghamton area that's being run by a liberal or a progressive.
You can't, but
that's what I'm saying. So he has a point. I didn't say I agreed with it, but he has a point that because at the moment in Broome County, there are 0 progressives or liberals running any local government operation. So that means they're all conservatives and all traditional office holders. So at least he, who's not afraid to identify as a progressive, that's his belief that it would be nice maybe just to see one local government in Broome County for once operated by a liberal or progressive.
Well, just to show you, Bob.
But it's not going to happen. Again, you show me any governmental unit, village, town, city, well, obviously not the county. There is no local government unit in Broome or Tioga County that's run by a liberal progressive. They're all run by conservatives.
But you act like that's a bad thing.
I didn't say it's a bad thing. Did I say it's a bad thing? I only told you the truth. I didn't pass judgment.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, I have all these office holders on the program. So for those of you who think that for some reason I'm some sort of liberal, nothing could be further from the truth. Listen to the program. When's the last time you heard a liberal on this program?
Every day.
No, I'm not talking about callers. I'm talking about guests. The phone lines are open to everybody. They're open to conservatives and liberals. Anybody who can afford a phone can call in.
Well, you have plenty of guests on the show. We don't know their politics, Bob.
Well, but that's my point, though. Maybe, yes, in fairness, I can guarantee over the course of a year, we wind up having liberals on the program, but they don't dare talk about it. Look at this. This is a Republican station. This station programs at least 18 hours a day of pure partisan Republican positions. So, of course, somebody who is a liberal or progressive would probably be afraid to come to this studio to expose themselves to the criticism and potential ridicule of the viewing audience.
Oh, why not?
I don't know. Maybe they're just afraid. I don't know. Maybe they don't want to hear criticism from people like you.
Hey, well, maybe they don't, Bob, but you know...
Well, who would? Who wants to constantly be criticized by a bunch of nitpickers?
I had an idea while you were off there, Bob, while you were gone. Would have been nice. Mr. John there, if he'd have come in for a couple hours a day for a whole week, Bob, would have been so good. A whole week of talking music for a couple hours a day. We'd have been in our glory. It would have been fun. Yeah. Got to do that sometime, Bob, when you go away. Let us talk music.
No. This is not a music program. This is issues. This is for the stick to the issues crowd. We don't do music and we don't do personalities.
Yeah, well, we all love music, Bob. We could talk all day about it.
Well, and sometimes we do. I'm just saying we're not going to have somebody come in for 2 or 3 hours a day and make it all about music. What if people have something, the people who are part of the stick to the issues crowd would be disappointed if they couldn't talk about the issues.
Well, they're disappointed anyway because you were gone and we couldn't talk about the issues. So might as well talk about music.
Well, and you're right. And the fact that Subway is switching over to Pepsi. How come, by the way, how come the liberal media doesn't tackle that? There's your controversy right there. What is the story behind that deal? Why Subway is dropping Coke and moving to Pepsi? Does it have anything to do with Clarence Thomas?
No, Bob, you don't think that.
I'm asking. I don't know what to think because they never came up with a full explanation. All they said is they're going to switch to Pepsi that they're dropping Coke, and they never explained why they dropped America's most popular sugary beverage.
Should they have to?
No, they don't have to. I'm just saying we don't know why, and so some people wonder if it has anything to do with Clarence Thomas.
I don't think it does, but
how do you know, though? How do we know?
I don't.
Because in the news release, it made absolutely no mention of the reason why, except something for more efficiency. What do you mean by that? Coca-Cola has as many or more delivery trucks as Pepsi. More efficiency. Did somebody... Now, remember, Clarence Thomas is a beloved member of the Supreme Court by conservatives. Conservative Americans love Clarence Thomas. So it strikes me that maybe it has something to do with politics. So because Clarence Thomas is associated with Coca-Cola, the people at the subway decided that they were going to drop Coke for conservatives and start putting in Pepsi for progressives.
Could it be that Trump drinks a lot of Diet Coke?
That too.
Yeah.
It could have everything to do with Clarence Thomas and Donald Trump. So it could be politics. It could be pure politics. And the only reason I say it could be is because Subway never came up with a very believable explanation why you would drop America's most popular soft drink and then switch over to a soft drink that's less popular. And sweeter, by the way. Sweeter. Have you ever noticed? So are they trying to get young Americans to ingest more sweeteners? Make us fatter and dumber?
No. Yeah, Bob. And, that is a different topic for another day. But
See, I'm not afraid to talk about the issues that have been ignored by the mainstream liberal media.
Yeah, and that's a lot. A lot, Bob, because they stick to, they're too political, you know that. And they always will be.
Who is? Who's too
mainstream
political?
Media.
No,
media.
They're not too political.
Yeah.
No, don't say that. It's not true. The mainstream media aren't too political. They're just right. They do research, so they know exactly how much politics to do. Appreciate your call. Thank you. 11:54. I mentioned the weekend is 6 minutes and 2 seconds away. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, Bob. Good morning. It's Vinny from Binghamton.
Oh, hey. You got in just under the wires.
Hey, well, I changed. I was going to talk politics, which I'm going to put a little bit in. But I just want to let you know, what was it, when they had the Porch Fest? I was there. I went to it, and it was my first time. Come to find out, one of my people I know, they're one of the hosts. And I'll tell you, it was nice. They do a nice job over there. They told me, Vin, get there early. So I was able to park right there in Rec Park, walk down, because I was over on Davis Street, one side of Davis Street. And I happened to know the person that sang in the group, and I used to work with them. And so I had talks with them. I saw some people that I have worked with like 21 years ago. They were there and sat there and talked to them, and just had, as a matter of fact, we were talking so long, we'd still be there, Bob, talking if, we didn't have jobs and stuff like that. But it was a good time. First time, like I said, I like the way they ran it. That's pretty slick. Cops were there, and I saw the golf carts driving people around, and because I think they had, like, on that Lord's Road down there, they had parking, but I was able to get up in Rec Park. So, I mean, that's a ways to go. I talked to one person. He said, "Oh, you know what, Vinny, the best way to see this is on a bicycle." And I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "You take your bike, go right around and watch it." But it was a nice time over there. I got to hand it to you. And one other thing, you got to really have a shout out to some of these hosts that run these things, because there's a lot of work to do. I mean, the person that I was with, that I know, they had food. You had to go out to get the food prepared, clean up the yard, clean up the house. and then just sit back and enjoy. And then also for the other people that are sitting there, listening to the music and I agree with you. Yeah, 7 o'clock, shut it down. People got to go to work. I agree. But people say, "Oh, Bob, you're just an old man." One of those people that says, "Get off my lawn." No, I don't care if they play till 3 a.m. If that was part of the agreement, I don't care if they have music on for 48 consecutive hours. If that's part of the agreement, if part of your agreement is that you're going to shut it down at 7, then shut it down at 7. Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into this. Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. Don't get greedy. Everybody had a nice time. They go home and, I enjoyed it. It was good. It was interesting. I'll probably be back. As a matter of fact, somebody told me that on one of them, I guess it depends on the size of your porch, they had like a brass section. And they were blowing, hitting them horns and saxophone. I said, "Oh, geez, I might have to get a bike." Because I'm like, next year to go, and they kind of.
I like the performers from Ukraine.
Oh, see, didn't.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Once you get going
Ukrainian
around,
folk music, and I really enjoyed it, and it was also for a good cause. Appreciate your call.
Yep.
And that, folks, is essentially all we can do for this week. But don't worry, we're going to do a lot more next week. We've only just begun. I'm Bob Joseph. Thanks for listening to Binghamton Now. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll be back Monday morning right here on News Radio WNBF.